In 30 BC, inside a dimly lit palace in Alexandria, a golden crown slipped from the brow of a dying woman and struck the cold marble floor. With that single hollow sound, 3,000 years of divine rule came to an abrupt, tragic end. But long before the Romans marched through the dust of Egypt, before the final queen embraced the venom of the asp, there was an idea, a desperate, terrifying gamble forged in blood and mud along the banks of a wild, flooding river. How did a fractured land of warring tribes transform into an empire so colossal that its monuments still defy time itself? And what catastrophic collapse almost erased it from history before its greatest golden age even began? To understand the pharaohs, you must go back to the beginning, to a time when the Nile ran red with civil war. Around 3100 BC, a warlord named Narmer marched out of the south. He bore a heavy stone mace and an unyielding vision to bind the two lands, the red crown of the north and the white crown of the south, under a single divine ruler. Through brutal conquest, Narmer succeeded. For the first time in human history, one man was elevated above mortality. He was not merely a king, he was Ma'at made flesh, the cosmic anchor keeping chaos from consuming the world. This absolute belief birthed the Old Kingdom, an era driven by an obsession so vast it demanded the impossible. Under King Sneferu and his son Khufu, tens of thousands of workers did not build with machines, but with muscle, copper chisels, and pure religious devotion. On the plateau of Giza, they carved millions of limestone blocks, stacking them with mathematical precision toward the heavens. Khufu's Great Pyramid was not just a tomb, it was a cosmic machine designed to launch a god into eternity. For centuries, the pharaohs seemed invincible, but the cosmos is indifferent to kings. Around 2200 BC, the skies turned to ash. The monsoon rains in the highlands failed. The Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt, did not rise. Year after year, the crops withered, and famine tore through the valley like a plague. Historical papyri record horrors so profound that mothers abandoned their children and men ate their own kind. The central authority shattered into chaos. Tombs were looted, royal statues smashed, and the god-king on the throne proved powerless against the dry earth. The immortal state had collapsed. Yet Egypt possessed a terrifying resilience. From the ashes of civil war and decades of humiliation under foreign invaders known as the Hyksos, a new lineage of pharaohs arose. They realized that to survive, Egypt could no longer hide behind its deserts. It had to become a monster. This was the birth of the new kingdom, the age of the warrior kings. No longer content with building pyramids, these pharaohs forged an empire. King Ahmose drove the invaders out, using their own weapon against them, the horse-drawn war chariot. Decades later, Thutmose III, a military genius who fought 17 campaigns without a single defeat, led his armies into the heart of the Levant. At the Battle of Megiddo, he crushed a coalition of rebel kings, stretching Egypt's borders from the Euphrates River deep into Nubia. Gold, slaves, and tribute flooded into the colossal temples of Karnak. Then came Ramesses II, Ramesses the Great, a sovereign whose ego rivaled the gods. At the Battle of Kadesh, caught in a deadly Hittite ambush, Ramesses claimed to have stood completely alone, abandoned by his troops, fighting off thousands of enemy chariots through sheer divine wrath. He covered the land with gigantic statues of his own face, carving temples straight into the cliffs of Abu Simbel, proclaiming to the ancient world that Egypt was eternal. But the greatest threat to Egypt was never a foreign army. It was a heresy from within. In the 14th century BC, the radical pharaoh Akhenaten did the unthinkable. He outlawed the traditional gods, dismantled the powerful priesthood of Amun, and forced the empire to worship a single sun disk, the Aten. He abandoned the capital, built a new city in the desert, and ignored his empire's borders as the provinces revolted. When Akhenaten died, his name was carved off the stone monuments, his memory cursed. His young son, Tutankhamun, restored the old gods but died mysteriously at just 18. Sealed away in the Valley of the Kings beneath layers of gold and lapis lazuli, Tutankhamun's tomb became a silent time capsule, a testament to a civilization desperately trying to lock its divine glory in place before the darkness closed in. Because the end was coming. As the entire Bronze Age collapsed, Mysterious invaders known as the Sea Peoples swept across the Mediterranean, burning cities to ash. Though Rameses III turned them back in brutal naval battles, the effort bled Egypt dry. The treasury was emptied, civil war returned. The once mighty empire fractured, falling prey to a succession of foreign conquerors. First the Nubians, then the brutal Assyrians, and finally the Persian Empire. When Alexander the Great marched into Egypt, he was welcomed not as a conqueror, but as a savior. Yet the native god kings were gone forever, replaced by a Greek dynasty, the Ptolemies. The final act belonged to Cleopatra VII. Brilliant, fluent in 9 languages, and utterly ruthless, she played a desperate game of high-stakes power against the rising titan of Rome. She seduced Julius Caesar and allied with Mark Antony, fighting to preserve her kingdom's independence. But at the Battle of Actium, Rome's war machine destroyed her fleet. Cornered, defeated, and refusing to be dragged through the streets of Rome in chains, Cleopatra embraced the bite of the asp. As her breath faded, 3,000 years of dynastic rule vanished into the desert wind. The temples fell silent. The sand buried the sphinxes. The hieroglyphs became a mute language that no living human could read. Yet the pharaohs did not truly die. They built for eternity. And in the silence of Giza, in the golden mask of a boy king, and in the sheer scale of their unyielding ambition, their defiance of mortality still echoes. They sacrificed an entire civilization to conquer death itself, and in the end, perhaps they succeeded.